and let me share the screen. So your attendance is really very few students only available. What about other students? They don't know that classes has started. Your total 43 students, right? And only what should I say? Mm, Only 16 or 17 are available. Anyway. So in the last class, we have just started a brief introduction, and we'll also continue some part of the introduction today also. And then we'll slowly enter into the uh, our topic of coal-bed methane in more detailed way. Okay. So in the last class, we have seen that there are some properties of the and there are some history. There are some places where the coal-bed methane has been started. Okay, what are the production? How the production has been readily increased with the year. Okay, and then we have also seen some of the properties or some of the features of the coal-bed methane reservoir or the coal properties. And today we'll be starting with the some of the advances in the coal bed methane technology. Okay, so I have also shared the screen, so it will be available to you. So today we'll start with the key advances of the in the coal bed methane technology. Now, this is also for theoretical purpose. Okay, this is for introductory purpose. Okay, more detailed purpose I'll be coming into the in the later chapters. Okay. Now, whenever they have thought that okay, this that coal bed methane production is significantly higher, and it is also having some less detrimental effect to the environment compared to the actual mining operation. So now the people have started that okay, how whatever the detrimental effect to the environment are existing, or maybe whatever the problem are existing with the coal bed methane. So with time, suppose it has been started in the year of 1983 and till the year 1995, they have seen that there is a boom. Okay, in the earlier classes I have shown you that in the 1995 there is a boom like this. The gas production has been increased significantly. Okay, so with this increase of this gas production, which is more or less eco-friendly manner, in an eco-friendly manner, so people now began to think that what are the ways that we can maximize the production in that time, at that point of time. Okay, so whatever technology is available, suppose you are doing at any point of time you are doing something, so obviously there will be a thinking that I have to complete my work with small time duration, with small effort, or with a less cost. Okay, so in with this thinking, you will be able to do in a cost-effective way and in a faster and the simple manner. You will be able to do okay anything. So in that case, they have thought that the whatever the advances has to be done, that has to be done in these three parameters, in these three aspects. What are the three aspects? First is the an improved understanding of the fundamentals of the coal bed methane production. So to know the detailed technology of the coal bed methane, first you have to understand the total fundamentals about the coal bed methane. Obviously, if you know what is the fundamental properties of the coal, which is very much related to the gas production or the storage mechanism or for the diffusion, then only you will be able to control some of the factors. They will you will be able to modify some of the factors to your suitable purposes, and then you will be able to change the parameter to increase the production. So you have to have a very good knowledge about the main basic coal bed methane reservoir. The second important technology advancements is the measuring reservoir properties. Now, in the reservoir properties are very much related to the coal bed methane reservoir. What are those properties? I am coming one by one. And the third is the reservoir simulation. Do you understand the term simulation? Yesterday class, the day before yesterday class, I have mentioned simulation is nothing but the parametric behavior, understanding the parametric behavior and the sensitivity of the parameter by changing the parameter or by increasing the value of the parameter or reducing the value, and how the output is going to change, like the way you are going to do the iterative process. Okay, the iteration processes are there that you have to reduce the accuracy, you have to increase the accuracy by reducing the significant error, and you are continuously doing, you are giving the values and the computer is totally running it time after time. Okay, there are so many steps, and only when a particular steps, okay, a particular step you have arrived and the significant error is much less in the safer region, or much less in the whatever is count to be as the very high error, then only we can say that okay, this value or this process is now achieved a most accurate part, and we are going to take that value. So reservoir simulation is just like the same process. We will be taking some of the parameters, and at a single time we are going to change only one parameter, and obviously we are going to see what is the effect of that parameter in our output, and output is obviously the gas production. Okay, so now if I come to the in little bit detailed way about the fundamentals of the coal bed methane production. In the next chapter, I'll be starting with the coal, and the third and fourth chapter of this book is going to discuss about the detailed coal bed methane reservoir fundamentals and the detailed parameter and various testing or various issues related to the gas storage and the transport. So as this is a very introduction part, so just to give you the idea, the fundamentals mean, suppose what we need to know about the production. That means we have to know that first how much gases are stored, okay, and where it is stored, how it is going to come out, how it is going to transfer to the fracture systems, and from there how we can take it to the surface, and we will be able to store it, capture it and store it, so that when it is required we will be able to send this or use this. Okay, so to understanding that, we have to go in the three different aspects. Again, there are sub aspects. What are the three aspects? First, we have to identify, if you can see, first we have to identify the factors that are going to control the coal bed methane production. Okay, so the production, as you can understand, that if it is very much pressure dependent, so I have already mentioned in the earlier class that the production will happen based on the desorption. Gases will desorb from the pores. It will come to the fracture boundary by diffusion process, which is the concentration dependent, and then finally, based on the permeability of the fracture, depending on the pressure, the gases will come to the surface. You will be putting a pump, you are taking out the water, so the pressure will be reduced. Gases will be dissolved first, then it will be diffused, and then it will move to the surface. So like that, the factors. Okay. The second point is the understand the relationship between the gas content and the sorption isotherm of a specific development. Now there is a new term which is called the sorption isotherm. Sorption is called the total process of adsorption and desorption. Total, it is called the sorption. Okay. Now isotherm, you know, iso means the same or the constant, and therm is the temperature. Okay. So isotherm means obviously a constant temperature process. The sorption isotherm, which is just a graph based on the pressure at a particular temperature. If you have this graph for a particular type of coal or particular type of reservoir, you will be able to estimate, if not accurately, you will be able to estimate that okay, at certain temperature, with the varying of pressure, how much the gas will be stored, or what is the chances of amount of the gas that can be stored into this reservoir. For example, in your figure 1.5, you can see this graph, this curvy graph starting from 0, 0, it is the isotherm graph. Okay, this has to be established by laboratory experiment or in the field by desorption canister testing. It can be established by two different ways. by laboratory experiment of cold adsorption isotherm process, or you can do it in the field by desorption canister testing. That will be discussed later. But to understand this graph, you can see the x-axis, there is a pressure. This pressure is the, in case of experimental pressure, it will be the experimental pressure. In case of field, it is the total reservoir pressure. So PSIA, okay, pound per square inch absolute. I hope you understand, you all understand what is the difference between absolute and the gauge pressure. All of you understand what is the difference between the absolute and the gauge pressure? Anybody? Hello? Nobody is there? Anybody is there in the class?
Hello, sir. Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I am audible. You are
Yes,
audible?
sir. Yes. Yes,
Yes.
sir. Actually, it is lagging a bit.
Okay.
Sir, can you please explain absolute and gauge pressure?
That is the question I have asked. If
No,
nobody
sir.
knows, then I'll be explaining.
I don't know, sir.
Okay. So, anybody knows about the difference between the absolute pressure and the gauge pressure? Anybody? Okay. In your ventilation course, you may have heard about the static pressure and the dynamic pressure. Is it okay? In your
Yes,
ventilation,
sir.
okay. And in that case also, you must have heard about the absolute pressure and the gauge pressure and the atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure you already know, which is the pressure present atmosphere, which is measured by the 76 centimeter of the mercury height. Okay. Gauge pressure is the pressure at any point. When we add the, if you put a pressure gauge at any point on the earth, whatever pressure it will be showing the gauge pressure. Gauge pressure means the pressure at that point. If you add the gauge pressure with the atmospheric pressure, you will be getting a absolute pressure, just like in the absolute scale. Okay, absolute scale of the temperature, you are going to get capital T in Kelvin scale is equal to small t, which is in the centigrade scale, plus 273 component. Okay, so totally you are going to get the temperature in the absolute scale in Kelvin. So like that, absolute pressure is the summation of the gauge pressure plus atmospheric pressure. Okay, at any point. So if you are putting, that's why you can see that this pressure, whatever they have mentioned in the x-axis, they have taken as an absolute pressure. That's why they have written as PSIA, pound per square inch absolute. So they have already included the atmospheric pressure. Why? Why absolute pressure is required? You can understand that the pressure is going to vary. Pressure is the P is equal to H rho G. So rho is the density, which is more or less constant for a particular temperature. G is the acceleration due to gravity, that is also more or less constant. But H, so if you consider the pressure, pressure is totally depending on the datum or the height. So whatever pressure you are going to measure at the surface datum level, if you go at high altitude or if you are going to the down or into the center of the earth, obviously the pressure will vary. So that small variation you are going to take into the consideration. That's why you are going to take the atmospheric pressure, the gauge pressure and the atmospheric pressure at that point. So you are going to get the absolute scale. Is it clear now, the difference between the gauge pressure and the absolute pressure?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. And then in the y-axis, you can see the methane storage capacity SCF per ton. the SCF is standard cubic feet per ton. Okay, per ton, just like the density, it is measured per unit of coal, or sometimes we are going to measure the coal price or the coal volume in per ton of coal. So like that. Why the standard has been mentioned? You know, in the real gas law, there is a standard temperature and pressure which is considered as 0 degree centigrade, and the pressure is 101.32 Pascal. Okay. But here, in case of coal bed methane, the standard cubic feet, the standard measurement is considered at reservoir pressure and 15 degree centigrade. Okay, 15 degree centigrade. That means if you convert it in the absolute scale, it will be coming as 273 plus 15, so 288. 15 or 15.5. So that is called the standard cubic feet. Okay. Now, why this standard unit has been given? Suppose at your work you are going to report, you are going to measure the isotherm at some other temperature. Somebody else is going to measure at other temperature. But if you are not going to mention your gas content or the storage capacity at a rationalized or the normalized unit, nobody, you will not be able to compare, because all those experiment has been done in the different temperature. Okay, so that's why the moment you are going to express in the standard cubic feet per ton, it will readily the one who is reading, he will be readily able to understand that this is reported at 15.5 degrees centigrade with varying of reservoir pressure, because the reservoir pressure is varying, so there is not requirement of the direct pressure mentioning, and per ton, so per unit weight of the coal. So that is the standard process. This graph is called the isotherm graph. This graph, Kirby graph, is called the isotherm graph, and this is to denote, this is to show you that how the pressure, how with the pressure the adsorption capacity is going to vary. Remember, this graph will be again discussed in a much more detailed way when we are going to discuss about the components or the parameters. But for now, this is the most fundamental step of considering the gas storage capacity. Okay, if you have this, if you have this isotherm graph for a particular reservoir, you can estimate, you can readily say that, okay, with pressure, how much your gas capacity will vary. If you are not having this reservoir isotherm graph, you have to take the sample and you have to do some standard testing procedure, and you will be able to establish this type of graph with the pressure and the methane absorption capacity. Okay, so this is the isotherm graph. So the second point is understand the relation between the gas content and the sorption isotherm for specific development. So this graph, you have to understand the nature of this graph. You can see that this graph is not actually a straight line. It is not actually varying with a rectangular hyperbola like. It is increasing very quickly at the lowest pressure at some within some 500 psi, but then after that the rate of increment is becoming very much slow, and finally at highest pressure around 2000 psi, you can see that it is more or less going to be flat. Okay, so this is also a particular thing to observe, that depending on the curvature, depending on the curvature of this graph, you will be able to say that if you consider the 3 or 4 different reservoirs, or if you are going to compare the reservoirs, by showing this nature of the isotherm graph, you will be able to tell that which reservoir for what pressure, how much gases will be produced and why, which will be more easy to for gas production, and which will be not easy. Suppose for this purpose, for this graph, you can see that this is the way of the graph. But now let me tell you, if there is a graph, imagine that if there is a graph that within the 500 psi pressure, imagine a graph that it is going to fall down of this graph and very mildly changing with 45-degree line. Okay, you can understand what will be a 45-degree line. So y is equal to x. The 45-degree line will be a diagonal. So suppose there is a isotherm graph for another reservoir which is just changing or lying above this 45 line. So that means it will be just a mildly varying. So in that case, what you can say? You can infer from that graph that with this graph which is shown and the another graph like the just above the 45-degree graph, that 45-degree more or less higher above the 45-degree line, okay, that graph will be much more suitable. Why? Because if you see, there is a more or less steady increase or steady decrease. Whereas if you see this graph, which were shown in this figure 1.5, you can see that you have to, if you are going to reduce the pressure. So until unless you are going to reduce the pressure, it is only after this point the production, the gases sharpness or the steepness of this graph is going to increase. This is your capacity, this is your pressure. So if you are going to pressure reduction from this point to this point, this is the total pressure reduction. So you can say that from 2000 you are going to come as 800, or sorry, it will be nearly 600 point. Okay, so you are going to reduce the 1400 psi pressure. But if you see how much gas capacity is is coming out, gas is coming out, you will see that it is nearly 450. Suppose it is 450 or 470. From that it is coming as only 350. So only 100. So a pressure reduction of 1400 psi is going to produce only 100 SCA per ton of gas. Whereas if you come to this part, the lower pressure graph, okay, you can see that from 600 to 0, okay, you will see how much the gas can be produced. You can see that 350 to 0. So in lower pressure stage, with a reduction from 600 to 0, you will be going to create a gas production from 350 to 0. So approximately all the gases are coming out. So this you have to understand from the isothermal graph. How and at what point this will be giving you the maximum production from the with varying the reservoir pressure. Okay. Next, come to the third point, maintaining the low back pressure. Why low back pressure? On the wells to increase the recovery. Low back pressure means if you are going to, as much as you are going to reduce the pressure, your gas content will be, your gas will come out and your gas production will be that much. Suppose in that case they have mentioned here there is a abundant gas content. Abundant means you cannot go further beyond this point, you cannot reduce the pressure beyond that point. Okay, so just to give you example, so you can see that 128 SCA per ton at this point and the pressure is then 100. So in this reservoir, as they have mentioned, you cannot go below 100 psi. Okay, so whatever gas is remaining from 100 psi, 100 psi to 0, that gas is you will not be able to extract. So that gas will be with the reservoir. But as much as you are going down, you can increase the gas production capacity. Suppose if your abundant gas pressure is not 100 but it is coming as 200, then what will happen? If you see the 200 point, so 200 point will lie here. Okay, the gas pressure 200 psi, 200 psi will be like here. Okay, so in the 200 psi your total gas content will be reaching to this 200. So more and more amount of the gases will be lost. That's why it is mentioned that you have to maintain the low back pressure. So if as your lower point of the pressure is more, or you are going to reduce much pressure, reservoir pressure, you are going to get more production. As simple as that. Okay. Now we are coming to a little bit detailed about the factors. What are the factors control the gas production? If you see the factors, obviously there is a you have to understand the isotherm. And if you are going to see the isotherm, so obviously you can understand that it is the properties of the coal, obviously the properties of the coal, the properties of the reservoir, and the interaction about the coal and the gas, how they are going to play at that reservoir condition. Reservoir condition means the temperature, the pressure, and the various rock mass properties will be coming also. Okay, so fundamentally These are some of the, in general, some of the main factors. What are these? The coal properties, the reservoir properties, and the reservoir conditions. Okay, in general. Now, second point is that maintaining low blood pressure. I have also already mentioned why you need to maintain a low blood pressure. The lower the pressure, the the more gases will be coming into the from adsorb state to the free state, because they will be dissolved if you are going down the pressure. So they will be, the more amount of the gases will be dissolving, and they will come to the free state, and then with a negative pressure suction you can take that gases out. Okay. The third point, is, these are the 3 points, okay, about the maintaining low blood pressure and the different fundamental concepts. Now, in the second concept, second advancement is the reservoir properties. So in the earlier days, with the boom of the CBM, they have studied some of the essential properties, and they have mentioned some of the properties which is given in these bullet forms. Okay. Now let me tell you that this is the book which is written in the 94, 95, or this is the report. So after that, it is nearly 25 years. There are a lot of development that has occurred in this coal bed methane gas production or the property analysis. And for that, in the advanced stage, when you will be able to finish this, I can give you some 1 or 2 paper just to show you what are the advancement has been occurred in this 25 significant year, not more than not earlier than you have understood total fundamentals. Okay, at your stage I don't want to give you the total detail of this CBM, because it will be out of the scope and you may not be able to understand. Okay, so let us try to understand first the fundamental concept from this book, and later, if it is required, I'll be giving you some 1 or 2 journal papers to understand the advancement of the work. Now let us try to understand about the reservoir property. So as I mentioned, the reservoir property is very much essential. So let us see what are the reservoir properties which are important. Okay, first is that you can see that the GRI is the Gas Research Institute in USA. Okay, they have conducted the property, and this note is from their report. It is based on the field studies and the total calculation. You can see that the most of the graphs and most of the reports or figures, they are taken from some of the reports. Okay. So first is that coal permeability is a very sensitive to stress conditions. Coal permeability is a very sensitive to the stress conditions. When performing the injection or the fall off test on coal seams, it is important to inject at very low rates to avoid fracturing the coal and to minimize the stress effect. Why this is important? They have seen that sometimes you have to inject the gases also to take out, to increase the gas production. Okay, when and where, that is different concept, but for you, you already know about the, okay, you have studied in the rock mechanics and I hope you all understand that what is mean by the permeability. Permeability is a pressure dependent process. Okay, when you are going to produce the gas, it is the permeability that will come into the play. Okay, so a reservoir, or suppose a coal or a rock, what is the permeability of that rock? Permeability means fluid to permeate. Okay, so obviously you can understand that if there is a open channels inside the rock or the coal or the reserves, so obviously its permeability will be going to increase, will be increasing. Otherwise its permeability is very low. And if there is no permeability, so what will happen? A fluid or the gas that will be stored in some particular area of work, area of deposition, it will not be able to transmit, or it will not be able to migrate to other places, because it is not having any open channel. And what are these open channel? These are called the discontinuities or the fractures. There is a common term of the discontinuities, the fractures, faults, joints. Okay, these are all are the discontinuities, but these are the special type of discontinuities. The general term is the discontinuities. Just like coal, there is a cleavage plane, there is a bedding plane, so this is also discontinuity. Okay, next point is the high skin factors often are encountered when testing the coal seams. High skin factor, Skin factor may be a new term. Okay, so let me explain it first. Skin factor. Anybody has any idea what is a skin factor? It is related to the drilling. Anybody
No,
understand
sir.
what is a skin factor? Okay, okay, then let me drive a borehole. What is happening? The side of the borehole. Okay, if it will be very much smooth in operation if you are cutting in a diamond core bit. Okay, suppose it is a core barrel, and as you are going to cut this drive the borehole, you will be getting a smooth periphery. All of you have been to the mines. Anybody, all of you have seen the loading of the explosive in the surface mining benches or the surface boreholes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have seen any borehole, any drilled borehole, you will see that the periphery of the borehole is very much smooth. More or less, it is
Smooth.
very much smooth. Okay. Just like the shaft. Imagine the shaft. A shaft has to be very much smooth, otherwise there will be ventilation resistance and there is so many problems. So in the boreholes also, as it is a natural process, so your borehole bit should be such a way that it will provide a smooth periphery. Okay. What will happen if there is not a smooth periphery? If there is not a smooth periphery, so imagine that there are a lot of cracks available at the surfaces. Okay, so what will happen if you are going to take out the gases or the water? If there is a smooth periphery, you are going to take out the pressure, so water will be directly coming out to the your to the surface, and you can store it. But if there is a much more damage, there is a much more crack, there is a the profile is not smooth but very much rough. So what will happen? The gases, when they are coming out, they will have a tendency to move in the side directions. And if they are going to move into the side direction, obviously they are going to penetrate into the side strata. Okay, into the side strata. So what will happen then? Whatever the damages are there, obviously the coal is very much discontinuous. Okay, there are and the once you have once you have created the shaft sinking, obviously the very much siding, the sides of the periphery or in a drill hole, the sides are very much rough. It will not be very much smooth, but you have to maintain the smooth surface. That's why the casing is provided. Casing, you understand?
Yes,
Anybody?
sir.
You understand? Yes. So the casing will provide. Suppose you are going to take a drill hole and you are going to put the explosive. So what will happen? If there is any crack or if there is a fissure connected with the borehole, okay. So what will happen? The explosive, it may not be even going to the down. It will be penetrating to the side layers. And when you are charging it, when you are going to blast the bench, so with the borehole also, any side part will be also blasted and it may give rise to the fly rock, the unnecessary vibration or the cratering effect. I hope you all understand all these terms. Okay. So to reduce that, there should not be any such broken or the damage to the surfaces of the borehole. This effect, whether it is broken or not, is called the skin factor. Very much breakage, so high skin damage, okay, or the formation damage. They are also in the petroleum engineering, that is also called as a formation damage. So formation damage is also like a skin damage or the skin factor. The more is the skin factor, the less is the skin factor. Skin factor is the ratio between how much pressure is available and how much pressure is coming out. So the lesser is the skin factor, the numerator, the lesser the value, that means most of the pressure you are going to generate and most of the pressure is going to waste for the side direction. So at the surface you will not be able to get the total quantity. So the skin factor is you are going to lose some of your production due to this damage of the rock. So that is called the skin factor. So now they are mentioning that high skin factors often are encountered when testing the coal seams, especially when testing a cemented or the cased well. High skin factor means that the factor, the cased or cemented, so it is very much smooth. So it is very high skin factor. So if there is a high skin factor, okay, it is the poor communication between the wellbore and the natural fracture system. See, poor communication between the borehole and the natural fracture. That means the skin is very much smooth. So there is no such penetration. So total amount or the maximum amount is directly coming to the surface. So the interaction, the side interaction of the borehole and the coal or the gas, okay, this is very much less. So this is possible when there is a high skin factor. So in that case, the production will increase. Okay, and at the same time, it will not allow the fluid to permeate to the side. So if you are going to measure the permeability with high skin factor, you will not be able to measure it properly, because coal as a natural phenomenon, as a natural deposition, coal will be very much rough. You will never find anywhere. If you go to the mine, if you see the pillar, until unless you have do very prop shooting, or you have given a cover of the cementing, you will not never get a smooth layer of the pillar. You will always find there is a rough surface. Why rough surface? Because the coal is a natural fracture. There is a different type of joint. You have to maintain the smooth periphery because of the less resistance. Otherwise, the ventilation will increase the resistance for rough surfaces. Okay. So that is the skin factor and their effect. Next is the absolute permeability. Now again, there is a term permeability, but then there is the absolute permeability. Absolute permeability is the actual or the ideal permeability. Suppose a fluid is flowing, so obviously if it is only the fluid is moving, then obviously it will be having whatever permeability you are going to measure. It is totally about the fluid. Okay. The relative permeability, there is another term which is called the relative permeability. What is relative permeability? With respect to another. Suppose there is a gas, there is a water. So if you are going to measure the gas permeability, again in this system, as there are two terms, gas, two phases, gas and the water, so in that case it will be called as the relative permeability of the gas or the relative permeability of the water with respect to one another. But if there is only one parameter, only one phase, either gas or the solid or the liquid, then obviously whatever permeability you are going to get, that will be the absolute permeability. Okay. Next is the coal. You know that coal is very much highly heterogeneous nature. So whatever you are going to test, it will vary from place to place, from borehole to borehole, from reservoir to reservoir. No two no two coal reservoirs will be having the same properties. In case of laboratory testing, you know that when you are going to prepare the coal borehole, okay, you are going to take the sample of the coal, and if you are going to test, if you are going to take the same sample taken from the same borehole, and you are going to cut, you are going to L by D ratio, you are going to keep it as 2.5 for initial testing or for triaxial testing, you will never get the same value, because although you have taken the sample from more or less same deposition, same thickness or same seam, and the same more or less same depth, but it is a natural deposition. So whatever the microcracks are present inside the core, that is beyond your control, and that is due to the heterogeneity of the coal. So this will vary. And then you will see that they have seen that certain test procedure will give some important effect onto this, which is beyond your scope. So I'm just keeping. Okay. There are some overpressurized zone which will also help for advancement or for giving the production. Then there is a zone isolation packer. If you use the zone isolation packer, now the zone isolation packer, if I can remember, you have studied the hydraulic fracturing process or hydraulic fracturing testing in the rock mechanics. Did you study the hydraulic fracturing process?
Yes, sir.
So in that measurement, You must have seen that there are some problems associated with the hydrolytic fracturing testing. The problem is that you have to identify a 1 meter zone in the borehole which is free from any fracture, and with this hydrolytic fracturing testing you are supposed to create a fresh fracture which is impossible in underground. And for that they are going to provide a zone isolation packer. What is a zone isolation packer? Isolation packer, it is a 1 meter wooden fracture, wooden piece which is going to separate the two layers. Okay, so by that also you will be able to put that into a borehole, and with the pressure you can see that how much pressure it can withstand, and you can test for some parameter for the permeability. Okay, so these are some of the concepts they have taken for this measurement. Now let us come to the our third concept, which is the simulation. I think we have to stop with this end of this first chapter. We'll not be having time. We'll start the second chapter from the next class. Okay. So in the simulation, advances in the reservoir simulation. What are the reservoir simulation? I have already told you what do you mean, what is mean by the reservoir simulation. So if you see, they have certainly taken some of the results and they have taken out some of the gist or the summarize the some of the observations. Now they have started, they have seen the maximum results from San Yuan Basin and the Black Warrior Basin, the two most important basins for coal bed production, coal bed methane production. And they have seen that the most important properties to measure are the coal thickness, cleat permeability, gas content, and the sorption isotherm. Now, sorption isotherm I have mentioned, coal thickness you understand, gas content is what is the content of the what is the gas content of a particular seam, which has to be estimated from the desorption canister testing at the field only. That is called the gas content. Whereas the gas storage capacity of a coal is established by the laboratory principle. Although these two things, the gas storage capacity and the gas content, seem to be the same, but this is actually not the same. Gas content measured at the field by desorption canister testing, whereas the storage capacity or the gas adsorbed for a particular type of coal is established from the laboratory experiment with varying pressure and a particular temperature in form of isotherm. Okay. Cleat permeability is a new term. Permeability, you know. Now the cleat. Cleat is a natural fracture occurred in the coal. There are different type of cleats, but for the time being, cleat is a type of fracture. Next point is the natural fracture porosity. Natural fracture porosity in the San Yuan Basin is much lower than the originally thought, this percent, and it is also varying. Now suppose they have done the simulation study, so they have taken some coal sample and they have modified and they have seen what are the variation that is going to occur into the production. Okay, now you know about the porosity. Now here the defined term is come as the cleat porosity. Now let me tell you, in the reservoir, there is a two type of porosity. First is the matrix porosity, which is of the solid pore spaces, and second is the fracture porosity, which is governing to the open channels. Both will denote the porosity. And the porosity, as you know, it is the ratio of it is the fraction of the void volume inside a solid volume or inside the total volume. Okay, inside the total volume. So for matrix, it will denote the total matrix solid porosity. Okay, and in case of fracture, it will denote what is the total fracture porosity or the total fracture void space available into the fracture system. So these are two types of porosity. Third point is that permeability estimated from the well test generally correlates with the permeability predicted by simulators. So they have seen that they have taken some field data, and with field data they have studied the various prediction analysis or various models. There are some models, mathematical models available, and they have seen that okay, whatever study you are going to do from the laboratory analysis, it is also going to vary. It is also going to match well. So the simulators are performing well. That is the bottom line. Coal seam reservoir properties. are heterogeneous and can vary widely from field to field and in some cases from well to well. Just now, whatever I have mentioned. Okay, even if you are going to consider the same area, even if you are going to consider the same depth, same coal type, but then also the moment you are going to take out the coal in the surface, you will see that there may be some different type of the properties of the discontinuity. Some discontinuity you may be able to see properly in the naked eye. Some discontinuity is only visible in the under the microscope. Okay. So these are some of the points just to give you an idea how the simulated result, the simulation results can influence your observation or your research or your prediction for the gas production. So suppose I am going to take, as I mentioned, that there is reservoir property. Suppose I am going to consider that, okay, at particular depth, the reservoir pressure will be the same. Okay. Okay. So thickness, let's say that the thickness is also same and the temperature is also same for simulation. So suppose I have taken a coal, I have done a laboratory experiment and I have estimated that, okay, with this pressure, with this temperature, at this particular type of coal, this is the estimated some 8 SCF per ton is the gas adsorbed, for example. Now I want to do the simulation. So what I'll be doing with this same isotherm, now I'll be changing, suppose the size fraction. What is the size fraction? The coal particles. Okay, the coal particles. The coal particles, you have seen, you have read about the mineral processing and you know what is the sheaf size or the mesh sizes. You understand what is the mesh size?
Yes, sir.
US mesh. Okay. So if you understand that, there is an undersize, there is an oversize. So now if I'm going to tell that earlier I have taken the coal size of minus 102 plus 150 and now I am going to consider minus 42 plus 100. So you can see that everything is same, but the size is going to reduce. And this, again, I am going to test how the production is going to vary. This is for the laboratory. If I am going to do the simulation, suppose I know about the porosity of the coal. But now, whenever I'm going to feed the model, in the first case, I'm going to do the run the model with original values. In the second case, I'm just going to, everything is the same. I'm just going to change the porosity, suppose from 0.5% to suppose 0.2% or suppose 0.1% and see for this change what is the output, how my output is going to affect. Suppose my permeability, I have seen that, okay, permeability unit is the permeability. Do you know what is the unit of permeability? Anybody can tell me what is the unit of permeability for any rock? You have studied permeability. No? Okay, permeability is measured by the Darcy. Okay, so if I mention that, okay, I have estimated that the permeability is the some amount of the millidarcy, suppose 10 millidarcy. Okay, suppose, but then I am going to consider, then I am going to consider that, okay, I am going to change this permeability, and so I'll be changing this permeability to suppose 20 millidarcy and see what is the effect. So now if you that if I'm going to increase permeability, obviously my production is going to increase because permeability is the ability to flow. So my ability to flow gas or fluid is increased. So obviously I'm going to get the high production. If my ability is going to reduce to only 0.1 millidarcy, so obviously it will be going to reduce. Just like that, for a simple coal sample with varying, suppose I am going to change my porosity 5 times and 5 output for different porosity. I am going to changing my permeability 5 times and I am going to changing 5 results. So for the same coal sample, I am going to have only one experiment and then 5 simulation for porosity, 5 simulation for permeability, and see the results. This is the way simulator will perform. Okay. So today I'm going to leave you at this point. So if any questions you are having, you can